Okay, let's unpack this. That feeling, right? It's almost universal. You've got this critical task staring you in the face. Maybe it's a huge term paper, could be studying for, I don't know, a big professional exam.
Yep.
You know you need to start. You absolutely know the deadline is creeping closer and closer.
Hmm.
Yet somehow you look up and bam, hours are just vanished. And you find yourself meticulously organizing your sock drawer, or maybe optimizing your email filters, or, watching some incredibly long documentary series on like the history of paper clips.
Oh, absolutely. And that feeling you get right there, that sudden jolt of adrenaline, the panic, but it's mixed, isn't it, with that sinking feeling, that guilt over the time you just wasted.
Exactly.
That is really the core of what we're diving into today. And it's important to say up front, this isn't some kind of moral failing. People often just label it as laziness, but, well, our source material frames it much more accurately, I think. It's a profound self-regulatory failure.
Self-regulatory failure. That hits it right on the head. So our mission today, for you listening, is really to get a clear, structured handle on the psychology behind this habitual delay. Why we do it, even when we know it's not good for us.
Right.
And crucially, walk away with a really robust, actionable way to actually overcome it. We're not just talking theory here. We're aiming to give you the toolkit for, well, mastering the delay.
Yeah, definitely practical. And to start, we really have to define the problem clearly. This deep dive is specifically looking at that tricky combination. Procrastination plus poor time management. They often go hand in hand.
They really do.
So procrastination itself, it's the habitual act of, delaying or postponing tasks. But here's the kicker, the self-sabotage part. You do it despite knowing that the delay is going to lead to negative consequences, things like stress, guilt, maybe not finishing the work at all.
That voluntary part you mentioned earlier before we started recording, that feels really key. It's not just taking a needed break.
Yeah.
It's an active choice almost.
It is. It's that difference between, say, a mindful pause to recharge and deliberately choosing to put something off for that short-term feeling of relief, even though you know future you is going to pay for it.
Right.
So today, we'll define it using some academic context, look at the, frankly, surprising causes, psychological, behavioral, even environmental. We'll look at the symptoms, which can be pretty painful, and then, as you said, get into this really comprehensive toolkit.
Yeah.
Nearly 30 detailed strategies based on solid evidence.
Okay, let's start with something I think we all do, what I kind of think of as the rationalization trap. When you're putting off that task, you catch yourself thinking, I just need a quick break first, or maybe I'm just waiting for the right mood. I need to feel inspired, or I need peak energy.
Yeah, I'll do it when I feel like it.
Exactly. But what's really happening, according to the research we looked at, is you're turning that one little delay into something more ingrained, a damaging pattern. You actually start believing that the immediate comfort of not starting is somehow worth the panic that's definitely coming later.
And that belief system, that's exactly what the academic work takes apart so well. When you look at the studies that really define this, the core idea keeps coming through. Dr. Pierre Steele, his work back in 2007 was really influential here. He defined procrastination very explicitly as a voluntary delay of important tasks.
Voluntary, there it is again.
Right, despite expecting to be worse off for the delay. That just captures the sort of conscious but irrational choice. You're inflicting future pain for present comfort.
It's fascinating, though, because often it feels like it's not about avoiding the work itself, but avoiding how the work makes you feel. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. That's precisely where the psychological research gives us such a clear insight. Work by Peichel and Flett around 2012 really cemented this link between delay and emotional avoidance.
Emotional avoidance. Okay.
Yeah. We delay things primarily to get away, just temporarily, from feelings like discomfort or frustration, boredom, or probably most commonly that anxiety tied to the task. Maybe anxiety about starting it or how well you'll do it or what people will think of the result.
So if I'm looking at, say, a really complex chapter in a textbook and I start feeling overwhelmed or stupid,
Right.
instead of pushing through that feeling, I suddenly find a very urgent need to check my email or scroll through social media.
That's the exact mechanism. It gives you an immediate, easy hit of feeling competent or just distracted. It's a form of mood repair, but, well, it's maladaptive. It doesn't actually solve the problem.
And the scale of this, it's not just a few people struggling, is it? You mentioned a stat earlier.
Yeah, it's staggering, really. If you feel like you're the only one dealing with this, you are absolutely not alone. APA studies, these are from 2019, suggests that over 70% of students admit they procrastinate regularly.
70%.
70%, and it seems to be increasing across different groups.
Wow. Okay, that number really drives home why this isn't just about, handing in a paper a day late. Let's just quickly touch on the consequences, because understanding the potential damage really motivates taking action. Academically, it's pretty obvious. Learning is incomplete, performance is all over the place.
Very inconsistent.
Yeah.
And emotionally. Well, the person procrastinating often lives with this constant background hum of guilt, chronic stress, and definitely lowered self-esteem. Because deep down, you don't quite trust yourself to follow through.
Mm.
And the long-term impact, that's really critical too. You risk developing this sort of passive, avoidant way of dealing with challenges if you constantly rely on that last-minute high-stress cramming.
It feels
It
awful.
feels terrible. But that lack of proactive discipline, it starts to seep into other areas, career readiness, maybe personal finances, even health decisions. It basically teaches your brain that avoidance, even though it's stressful, is a somehow viable strategy, even when all the evidence shows it leads to, worse outcomes.
Okay, so we know what it is, we know it's widespread, and we know it has real costs. Now let's get into the why. Why do we do this? Our sources did a great job breaking the causes down into, like, three main buckets, which makes it easier to grasp. What's going on inside us? Psychological. What's wrong with our process, cognitive or behavioral? And what's happening in our surroundings? Environmental.
Exactly. And it makes sense to start
Shit.
with those internal drivers, the psychological causes, because these are often the trickiest ones to tackle. They're tied to these really deep-seated beliefs we have about ourselves, about our competence, maybe about threat. Hashtag jure, psychological causes.
And number one on that list has to be the fear of failure. This is just huge, isn't it? If you're really anxious about how you'll perform, or you're worried about being judged by a professor, your boss, even your peers,
Mm-hmm.
it can actually feel safer not to start the task at all, because if you don't start, you can't fail. It's like a weird kind of defensive move. Avoidance.
It absolutely is, and that ties straight into a real paradox. Perfectionism. We tend to think of perfectionists as super organized, always on top of things.
Right. Getting everything perfect.
But actually, many perfectionists are chronic procrastinators. They set these incredibly high, often unrealistic standards for themselves. And because meeting those standards feels impossible or incredibly daunting,
They freeze.
they freeze or they wait. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect conditions, the perfect idea to strike before they begin. But since perfection is, well, usually unattainable.
The perfect time never comes.
Exactly.
That's
So
true.
starting gets pushed off indefinitely, guarantees delay. And it also works as this sneaky ego protection mechanism. The thinking goes, well, I didn't fail because I wasn't good enough. I just ran out of time because I couldn't start under perfect conditions.
Ah, that's a brilliant distinction. The procrastination itself becomes the excuse, protecting your self-image. Wow. Which connects right into the next point, doesn't it? Low self-efficacy. If we think back to Albert Bandura's work, Social Cognitive Theory, self-efficacy is basically just your belief in your own ability to do what's needed to reach a goal.
Spot on. And if you lack that core belief, if you genuinely don't trust yourself to handle the task effectively or efficiently, well, you're naturally driven to delay. Why would you eagerly jump into something you fundamentally believe you're going to struggle with, or
Yeah.
maybe even fail at?
Especially if you've struggled before.
Precisely. Past struggles make you hesitant to try again now, and that just keeps the cycle going.
Okay, so beyond those core fears, there's also the immediate issue of just managing feelings in the moment. Emotional dysregulation. That sounds clinical, but it just means you find it really hard to tolerate or handle negative emotions, right? Like boredom, confusion, frustration, or even just the basic stress of getting started.
Exactly. If a task makes you feel bad now, and you haven't developed great ways to cope with feeling bad, avoidance seems like the easiest path.
And that ties into probably the biggest internal battle for many people. Poor impulse control. This is that classic fight between your present self and your future self, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And, spoiler alert, present self usually wins in the short term. We consistently choose that immediate gratification, scrolling social media, watching another video, grabbing a snack over, committing to something that benefits our future self.
Because the pleasure or the distraction is right now.
It's immediate. It's that quick escape from the discomfort we talked about earlier. The brain's reward system basically hijacks the part that's supposed to be doing the long-term planning. Hashtag #TagTadMeBay. Cognitive and behavioral causes.
Okay, moving on to that second category, the cognitive and behavioral screw-ups. These seem less about deep-seated fear and more about, like, breakdowns in our process or just errors in thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And probably the most common one here is just a lack of planning and prioritization. Big tasks, especially, can feel really overwhelming, kind of vague and scary.
Like, write my thesis. Where do you even begin?
Precisely. So because it feels so huge, we fail to break it down into smaller, clearly defined, manageable steps. And if you don't know what the very first concrete step is, well, you often end up taking no steps at all.
Inertia takes over.
Right. And this often goes hand in hand with the absence of structured routines. If your study schedule or your work schedule is basically just based on whenever you feel like it, or driven purely by panic at the last minute, inefficiency is pretty much guaranteed.
You waste energy just deciding what to do.
Exactly. You burn through precious mental energy constantly figuring out what comes next, when you'll do it, instead of just doing it. Sometimes people call that decision fatigue.
And I think maybe the sneakiest cognitive issue, the one that gets me sometimes, is the overestimation of available time. You look at a deadline that's, say, a week or two away.
Plenty of time.
Right. Oh, that's ages away. I've got loads of time. This incredibly powerful but totally deceptive belief that there's still time left just kills any sense of urgency right now.
It really does. It minimizes the perceived need to start and then inevitably leads to that horrible last-minute panic and cramming.
Hmm.
We are just fundamentally bad at judging how long tasks will actually take. It's called the planning fallacy.
Ah, okay. And finally, under this category, sometimes it's really simple. Task aversion.
Hmm.
You just plain don't want to do it because you find the subject boring or difficult or just uninteresting.
Yep. It's not necessarily fear of failure this time. It's just the straightforward desire to avoid something unpleasant right now.
Yeah.
The task itself feels like a punishment. Hashtag take tai chi, environmental causes.
Okay, and the third bucket really brings it home to our modern lives, the environmental causes, the ecosystem we operate in. And let's be honest, in today's world, the number one culprit has got to be the digital drain, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's inescapable. We are just constantly bombarded with digital distractions. Notifications pinging, games calling, social media feeds endlessly scrolling. Our environment is literally designed, often by very smart people, attention economists, to pull our focus away from deep, concentrated work.
Think about just one notification popping up, even if you ignore it.
It breaks your concentration.
Yeah.
Research suggests it takes, on average, something like 23 minutes to fully get back into that deep focus state after an interruption.
23 minutes.
Yeah. And at the same time, glancing at that notification, even for a second, often gives you this tiny little hit of short-term reward or interest. So our environment is actively undermining our ability to control our impulses, almost by design.
That's a bit terrifying. Beyond the digital noise, though, there are other environmental factors, like systemic gaps, a lack of accountability, maybe? If nobody's checking in, no monitoring, no deadlines with real teeth.
Exactly. No external reporting structure, no regular check-ins. It just allows procrastination habits to thrive, completely unchecked. There's no external pressure to counteract the internal urge to delay.
And finally, something many high achievers fall into, overcommitment. Just taking on way too much stuff. Academic courses, social things, clubs, work, family obligations. If you don't schedule effectively, even if you want to manage your time well, your calendar's already bursting. You're basically setting yourself up to fail before you even start.
Yeah, you're spread too thin, and something inevitably has to give. And often, it's the important but non-urgent tasks that get pushed aside first. All right, so we've dug into the roots. Now let's look at how this problem actually shows up. How does it manifest itself? And it's kind of helpful, I think, to look at the symptoms from two different angles. The internal struggle, what the person themselves is feeling, and then the external signs, what maybe a teacher or a manager or a mentor might observe.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So from the student's point of view, or the person doing the procrastinating, that internal experience,
Yeah.
it's defined by that really painful loop, isn't it? Shame, stress.
Definitely. They typically experience frequent postponement, often pushing things right up until the very last minute, maybe even past the deadline.
That feeling of dread building.
Exactly. Increased anxiety as deadlines get closer. And maybe the most crippling symptom for many is the sheer difficulty in just starting tasks. Even when they're fully aware of how urgent it is, how important the consequences are, that initial friction to just begin feels enormous, like wading through treacle.
And you find yourself doing other things instead, right? Things that feel vaguely productive but aren't the main task.
Oh, absolutely. Spending excessive time on trivial or low-priority tasks. This is classic avoidance behavior. It feels like you're being productive, organizing your notes beautifully, cleaning your entire apartment, researching some obscure historical detail vaguely related to your project.
Making the perfect playlist for studying.
Precisely. But it's really just structured procrastination. It gives you that temporary relief from facing the big, scary task, but you're not actually making any forward progress on what matters. And this often leads to the biggest rationalization, the lie we tell ourselves. Oh, it's okay. I work better under pressure.
Okay, I have to push back on that a little because sometimes that last-minute adrenaline surge does seem to produce something decent, right? How do we explain that if it's not actually better?
That's a great question. That phrase, I work better under pressure, it's really a coping mechanism. It's a justification for the delay, not an accurate description of an optimal working state. What you're actually experiencing is the body's fight or flight response kicking in that high-stakes activation force's focus because the deadline feels like a threat.
Ah, okay. So it's forced focus out of panic, not better quality work.
Exactly. The quality of learning, the depth of understanding, the thoroughness of the work, the creativity, all of those are almost always compromised compared to what could have been achieved with steady, planned work. It's just justifying that painful, adrenaline-fueled scramble rather than addressing the underlying habit of delay.
That really clarifies the internal story. Okay, so now externally. What does a teacher or maybe a colleague or supervisor see?
Well, they see the results of that internal struggle. They notice things like repeated late submissions of work. They see unpreparedness for tests, meetings, or class discussions.
Yeah, you can tell when someone hasn't done the reading.
Definitely. They might observe visible stress or exhaustion, especially around exam times or project deadlines. And perhaps the most frustrating thing for them to see is a perceived lack of sustained progress in someone who clearly has the intellectual potential. You know they could do better.
They see the potential, but not the follow-through.
Right. And the final behavioral indicator they often encounter is a recurring pattern of excuses for incomplete or late work, often quite elaborate excuses, designed, maybe subconsciously, to deflect responsibility and avoid facing that internal feeling of having failed to regulate oneself.
It's fascinating how those external signs often point right back to the psychological causes we discussed earlier, like the fear of failure or low self-efficacy. It confirms that lack of control.
It really does.
Yeah.
And if you want to connect it to theory, Aidson's theory of planned behavior fits quite well here. Aidson basically suggests that our behavioral intentions, like I fully intend to study tonight, and our perceived behavioral control, which is how much do I believe I can actually manage distractions and my own emotional discomfort to follow through. These two things directly influence our actual behavior.
So if the intention is there, but the belief in your ability to control yourself isn't.
Then the behavior we see is procrastination. The symptoms we just listed, both internal and external, are really the observable, often painful consequences of that gap between intention and perceived control. It's the failure to turn wanting to do it into actually doing it.
Okay, this is the part everyone's been waiting for. We've defined the problem, we've looked deep into the causes, we know what the symptoms look like. Now, the crucial bit, the actionable steps. How do we actually fight back? We're moving out of just understanding it and into strategy. And the good news is, our sources provided this amazing toolkit, almost 30 specific evidence-based strategies. We've tried to group them into concepts to make them easier to digest and implement.
Right, shifting from diagnosis to action. And the first set of strategies really focuses on behavior, on just getting started, overcoming that initial inertia. Hashtag NA. Self-help behavioral strategies, the initiation boost. Because, as we identified, that initiation anxiety, just the dread of starting, is often the single biggest hurdle. So we need tactics specifically designed to lower that first point of friction.
Makes sense. And the first hack is purely about behavior change. Start small, like ridiculously small. Commit to just, say, 10 minutes of focused work.
Just 10 minutes.
Anyone can handle 10 minutes of almost anything, right? It kind of tricks your brain. You realize, okay, this isn't actually as terrible or overwhelming as I built it up to be, and that builds crucial momentum. Getting started is often the hardest part.
Absolutely. And alongside that, there's that essential little behavioral shortcut. You see it everywhere in productivity advice. The 2-minute rule.
Ah, yes, David Allen's thing.
Could be, it's widely cited. The idea is simple. If a task pops into your head and you estimate it will take less than 2 minutes to complete, just do it immediately, right then and there.
Like sending that quick confirmation email or tidying just your immediate desk space or maybe grabbing the books you need for later.
Exactly. It cuts down on mental clutter, reduces decision fatigue later, and crucially, it gives you an immediate small win that reinforces the feeling of being productive and in control.
Okay, but what about those really big projects? The ones that trigger major anxiety, like a dissertation or a massive report. 2 minutes isn't going to cut it there.
No, definitely not. For those big, daunting tasks, the strategy has to be structural. Break large tasks into subtasks. You have to dissect that huge assignment into much smaller, clearly defined, measurable steps or goals.
So instead of having write research paper on your to-do list, which is terrifying.
Terrifying and vague, you'd have things like step 1, outline introduction section, then step 2, find 3 primary sources for section 1, then step 3, write the topic sentence for the first paragraph of section 1. You have to make that very first step feel almost effortless.
Got it. Make it concrete and tiny.
Yes. And building right on that, the absolute foundation of managing time effectively, especially when you're fighting procrastination, is rigorous goal definition. You really have to set SMART goals.
SMART goals. Okay, let's quickly recap what that stands for. Specific.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Vague goals like, I need to study more this week, are basically invitations to procrastinate. They're guaranteed to fail because you don't know what done looks like.
Whereas a SMART goal would be
Something like, I will read and summarize Chapter 4 of the textbook between 7:00 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. tonight. It's specific, you can measure if you did it, it seems achievable, it's relevant to your course, and it has a clear time frame.
Okay, that makes sense. So once you have these SMART goals or these tiny subtasks, you need to actually schedule them, right? Not just hope you'll get to them.
Absolutely critical. You need to proactively allocate time for them. And the best way is often time blocking. Literally blocking out fixed, non-negotiable time slots in your calendar or planner for specific tasks, study blocks, but also for breaks, meals, exercise, and rest.
So it's not just a maybe, it's an appointment with yourself.
Exactly. If it's not scheduled, your brain tends to treat it as optional, and that's when procrastination finds an opening. Oh, I could do it now, or maybe later.
Right. And when you have multiple tasks vying for those time blocks, you need to decide what gets priority. How do you do that effectively?
That's where effective prioritization comes in.
Yeah.
And a really powerful tool for this, mentioned in our sources, is the Eisenhower matrix. It helps you categorize everything on your plate based on 2 dimensions: urgency and importance.
Okay, the Eisenhower matrix, let's unpack that a bit because it sounds useful but maybe a little abstract. It helps you decide where to focus, right? What are the categories?
Right. It creates 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is urgent and important. These are crises, deadlines looming right now, stuff you have to do immediately, like that paper due tomorrow.
Okay, the fires.
The fires, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Quadrant 2 is not urgent, but important. This is the crucial one for long-term success. Things like planning, relationship building, exercise, learning, preparing for that exam that's still 2 weeks away. It's vital, but easy to put off because it's not screaming at you yet.
Got it. Important, but no immediate deadline pressure.
Then quadrant 3 is urgent, but not important. These are often interruptions, emails, some meetings, requests from others that feel urgent, but don't actually align with your key goals. The advice here is usually delegate or minimize these.
The distractions that feel important.
Right. And finally, quadrant 4 is not urgent and not important. These are the true time wasters. Excessive social media scrolling, watching pointless TV, busy work. The goal here is to eliminate these as much as possible.
And procrastinators tend to live where?
Procrastinators often live bouncing between quadrant 1 putting out fires because they neglected quadrant 2 and quadrant 4 escaping into distraction. The key to overcoming procrastination is spending more time proactively scheduling and working on those important but not urgent quadrant 2 activities.
That makes so much sense. Plan the important stuff before it becomes an urgent crisis. Okay, what other daily habits help cement this?
A few foundational things. Consistently create and review daily to-do lists. Seeing your tasks written down makes them more concrete. Also, set realistic deadlines for your tasks, even self-imposed ones. Don't try to cram 5 hours of work into 2 hours. That just sets you up for failure and more avoidance.
Be honest about how long things take.
Yes. And critically, avoid multitasking. We think we're good at it, but the research is clear. Context switching kills focus and efficiency. Concentrate fully on one task at a time until it's done, or until your scheduled block for it ends.
Single tasking. It feels slower, but it's actually faster.
It really is, for quality work. And finally, don't underestimate the power of reinforcement. Since procrastination is so often driven by avoiding negative feelings, we need to actively create positive ones. Reward your progress.
Like giving yourself a treat.
Exactly. Small, immediate rewards after completing a focused work block or a specific task. It could be listening to your favorite song, having a cup of really nice tea, taking a short walk outside, watching one funny video, whatever works for you. It makes the effort feel worthwhile and helps interrupt that negative cycle of guilt and avoidance. B. Cognitive and emotional regulation. Reframing the struggle.
Okay, that covers a lot of the practical doing strategies.
Hmm.
But we know procrastination is deeply tied to emotions and thoughts. So this next set of strategies focuses more on the internal stuff, right? Reframing the struggle.
Precisely. If procrastination is fundamentally about emotional avoidance, then we absolutely need tools to manage those emotions and the thoughts that trigger them. And the very first step here has to be self-awareness.
Just noticing what you're doing.
Yeah, noticing and acknowledging your patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Reflecting on when you tend to procrastinate, what tasks trigger it most, and what your go-to avoidance habits are: scrolling, snacking, cleaning. And doing this without judgment, just observing.
That without judgment part sounds key because beating yourself up doesn't help.
It absolutely doesn't. In fact, it makes it worse, which leads directly to, arguably, the most powerful cognitive shift recommended in the literature. Practice self-compassion.
Being kind to yourself when you slip up.
Exactly. Instead of that harsh inner critic saying, "Oh, I'm so lazy, I have no willpower," try replacing it with understanding. Okay, I'm finding this task really difficult and I'm feeling anxious about starting it. When you swap that harsh self-criticism for self-understanding, you actually break the negative feedback loop. Guilt fuels more procrastination. Compassion creates the space to try again.
That's a huge reframe. Okay, so alongside being kinder to yourself, we also need to actively change the negative thoughts themselves.
Yes, deliberately reframe negative thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking this is too hard or I'm going to fail, try shifting the focus. Focus on the effort you can put in right now or the progress you can make, even if it's small. Instead of, I have to write this whole chapter, tell yourself, I just need to try writing for 10 minutes or I just need to outline the first section.
Lower the stakes in your own mind.
Precisely. And another technique is to visualize success. Actively imagine the feeling of satisfaction, relief, and accomplishment you'll experience when the task is done. Use that positive future feeling as motivation to push through the discomfort now.
Okay, those are mindset shifts. What about techniques for maintaining focus during the actual work time?
For structured focus, there's a technique that's incredibly popular for a reason, beloved by productivity folks, because it inherently builds in those boundaries and rewards we talked about. Apply the Pomodoro technique.
Ah, the tomato timer, so 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
That's the classic formula, yes.
Uh,
25 minutes of intense, single-task focus, no interruptions allowed, followed by a mandatory 5-minute break completely away from the task. Then you repeat the cycle. After maybe 4 Pomodoros, you take a longer break.
and the magic isn't just the timer itself, is it? It's more psychological.
It absolutely is. It tackles that fear of getting stuck in endless work. It makes the task feel finite. It tells your anxious brain, look, you only have to tolerate this discomfort, this focus, for 25 minutes. That feels manageable.
Yeah, I can do anything for 25 minutes.
Right. The timer removes the mental load of deciding when to take a break, and the scheduled break itself acts as that immediate guaranteed reward we mentioned earlier. It's a really potent antidote to initiation anxiety and overwhelm.
Okay, but for that 25 minutes to work, you really need to minimize interruptions, that digital drain we talked about.
Non-negotiable. Sustained focus requires aggressively reducing distractions. The absolute baseline is keep your phone notifications OFF. Ideally, put the phone on silent and physically out of sight, out of reach during your focused work blocks. If the temptation isn't immediately accessible, your impulse control has a much better chance.
Remove the trigger from the environment.
Exactly. And finally, to make sure these strategies are actually working and to hold yourself accountable, you need observation. Self-monitor your progress. Keep some kind of productivity journal or log.
What do you track?
Track your time. When did you actually work? Track your focused efforts. How many Pomodoros did you complete? Track your completed tasks or subtasks. This forces honesty, provides objective data on where your time is really going, bypassing our tendency to misjudge, and shows you tangible progress, which is motivating.
All right, we've tackled the internal world, the mindset shifts, the emotional regulation, and the immediate behaviors like starting small and using Pomodoros. Now let's talk about building the right world around you, creating an ecosystem that actually supports focus and minimizes those temptations, the environmental and lifestyle adjustments.
Yeah, this is crucial because willpower is finite. You want your environment to do some of the heavy lifting for you, making it easier to do the right thing and harder to do the wrong thing.
Makes sense. So starting with the physical space.
Absolutely. Your physical space sends powerful cues to your brain. The recommendation is to establish a fixed, quiet, and organized study area. A specific desk, a specific corner, maybe even a specific chair.
So your brain learns, when I'm here, it's work time.
Exactly. It primes you for focus. And conversely, try hard not to study or do serious work in places strongly associated with relaxation or leisure,
Mm.
like your bed or the comfy sofa in front of the TV. Keep those zones separate.
Okay, physical space clear. What about that digital environment again? We turned off notifications, but can we do more?
Definitely. Be proactive. Designate specific digital-free hours or blocks of time, especially during your prime study or work periods. You might need to use tools for this website, blockers, app timers that limit your access to distracting sites or apps after a certain time limit.
So you literally make the distraction inaccessible for a while.
Yes. If you have to jump through hoops to get to Instagram or your favorite news site, you're much less likely to impulsively click over when you hit a tough spot in your work. Increase the friction for distractions.
Got it. What about broader lifestyle factors? Sleep came up earlier.
Hugely important for cognitive function and emotional regulation. Set consistent sleep and wake-up routines. Going to bed and waking up around the same time each day, even on weekends as much as possible.
Ouch, weekends too.
Ideally, yes, or keep the variation minimal. Biological consistency reduces cognitive load, it stabilizes your mood, and it significantly enhances your ability to concentrate when you need to. It directly tackles that psychological driver of emotional dysregulation we discussed. Consistent sleep is like a superpower for focus.
Okay, superpower noted. What about managing all the tasks and deadlines themselves? Keeping track.
System support is essential here. You absolutely need to have a count. Use planners and calendars effectively, whether it's a digital calendar, a physical planner, a whiteboard. Find a system that works for you. And crucially, schedule everything in it, not just your academic or work tasks.
So social events, appointments, exercise, put it all in.
Yes, because when all your commitments are visible in one place, you get a realistic picture of your available time. It helps prevent overcommitment, and it ensures that personal time and rest don't just get squeezed out by work creeping into every available slot. Schedule your downtime, too.
Ah, scheduling breaks and fun. I like that. Now, what about the lack of monitoring we mentioned as an environmental cause? How do you build in accountability if it's not already there?
You have to create it yourself sometimes. Seek out accountability partners. Find someone, maybe a responsible classmate, a friend who's also working on goals, a mentor, even a family member who you can share your specific, measurable goals with.
And what do? Nag you.
Uh-huh. Hopefully not nag. But you arrange to check in regularly. Maybe a quick text on Monday morning, did you finish that chapter outline? Or a brief weekly call? Just knowing that someone else is aware of your goal and expects an update can provide powerful external motivation to override that internal urge to delay.
The power of not wanting to look bad in front of someone else.
It's surprisingly effective. And don't forget to leverage technology strategically. We talked about blockers, but there are also apps designed specifically to boost productivity. Utilize productivity apps like Forest, which gamify staying off your phone, Focus To Do, combines Pomodoro Timer with Task List, or even more complex tools like Notion or Asana for tracking bigger projects.
So use tech to fight tech distractions, essentially.
Sometimes, yes. Externalize your discipline where you can. Let the tool handle the timing or the tracking.
Okay, these are all great adjustments, but how do you make sure these changes stick? How do you sustain it?
And that requires ongoing effort. Two key things. Reflect weekly on what's working and what's not. Which strategies helped you most this week? Where did you slip up? Adjust your approach based on that feedback and focus on gradually building discipline. Think 1% improvement every day, not trying to become a productivity machine overnight. That leads to burnout.
Small, consistent steps.
Exactly, and absolutely crucial. Balance academics or work and rest rigorously. You need focused effort, but you also desperately need sufficient downtime, sleep, and activities you enjoy to recharge. Burnout is a massive trigger for falling back into procrastination. Protect your rest as fiercely as you protect your work time. Hashtag tag the Student Growth Toolkit.
Okay, this huge list of solutions is fantastic, but just hearing them isn't enough. They need to move from just, knowledge in your head into actual practice. Our source material included some really concrete exercises for this, like a toolkit to help listeners make that transition.
Yes, these are designed to force that confrontation with the task itself and confrontation with how you're actually using your time right now. They make the abstract concrete.
Okay, first one sounds like it directly tackles that feeling of overwhelm with big projects. The task initiation chart. How does that work?
Right. So you take maybe 3 of your current major goals or projects. For each one, you break it down into 5 or maybe more really small, actionable steps, like the absolute smallest unit of work you can imagine doing.
Smaller than we think.
Probably. And then, crucially, you assign a specific, realistic deadline to each tiny step, not just the overall project deadline.
Ah, okay. So the power is transforming, say, write thesis into maybe 15 separate scheduled, non-scary micro tasks on your calendar.
Exactly. That moment of friction, where do I even start,
Hmm.
is drastically reduced because your chart tells you precisely what the very first, very small task is. It makes it much easier to apply something like the 2-minute rule or just dive in for 10 minutes.
Got it. Okay, second exercise sounds potentially painful but revealing, the time audit exercise. This is where you actually track your time.
Yes. For maybe a week, you meticulously log how you spend all 24 hours of your day. You can use an app, a spreadsheet, even just a notebook. Be brutally honest.
And the point is,
The point is to get objective data. Most people are genuinely shocked when they see where their time actually goes. They vastly underestimate time spent on distractions, scrolling, interruptions, just
Mhm.
drifting, and overestimate their focused work time.
So you identify the leaks in your time bucket.
Precisely. You pinpoint those unproductive hours, the time sinks, and then you use that hard data to make conscious decisions about replacing some of that wasted time with these scheduled, focused work blocks we talked about. Remember that phrase, you can't manage what you don't measure? This gives you the measurement.
Okay, makes sense. And the third one sounds like a direct challenge. The beat the delay challenge. What's involved?
This one's beautifully simple, purely behavioral. The commitment is, for 1 week, 7 days straight, you must complete one task each day that you have been postponing.
Even if it's tiny, like making that phone call you've been dreading.
Especially if it's tiny. It doesn't matter how small the task is. The goal is to just break the avoidance streak. Doing this for 7 days starts to retrain your brain. It teaches you that the feeling of accomplishment after doing the thing, however small, feels way better than the anxiety of avoiding it. It starts rebuilding that trust in your ability to follow through. Okay, alongside those active exercises, effective change really requires knowing where you're starting from. Objective self-awareness is key. Our sources included a great tool for this, a 5-point check-in self-assessment worksheet.
How did that work? Like a quiz?
Sort of. You rate yourself on a scale, typically 1, strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree, on a series of statements designed to pinpoint common procrastination habits and your perceived level of control.
What kind of statements?
Things directly related to what we've discussed, like,
Yeah.
I often delay starting important work. I find it hard to estimate how long tasks will take. I feel anxious and stressed as deadlines get closer. I get distracted by social media or other things when I should be working. I have a clear, structured routine for my studies work.
Okay, so it measures the specific symptoms. And the score tells you.
The total score gives you a kind of personalized snapshot of where you are right now. The interpretation guide then typically breaks scores down into levels. For instance, a high score, maybe 20, 25 out of 25, would signal severe, deeply ingrained procrastination habits needing urgent, comprehensive intervention across the board.
Whereas a low score.
A low score, say below 10, might indicate you generally have pretty effective time management, maybe just needing minor tweaks. The real value is having this number. It gives you a baseline, and you can retake the assessment periodically, maybe monthly, to objectively track your progress and see if the strategies you're implementing are actually moving the needle.
Quantifying progress, that's motivating, and this self-assessment naturally leads to thinking more deeply, right? Reflection.
Absolutely. The score is just data. The real work happens in the reflection afterwards. The sources highlighted some key self-inquiry questions you should ask yourself based on your assessment and experiences. Things like, what are the top 3 real reasons I delay my work? Is it fear, perfectionism, poor planning? Really dig deep.
And identifying the main time sinks.
Yes. What specific distractions consume most of my time? And what concrete steps can I take this week to limit them? Be specific. And maybe the most powerful question for creating positive change. What would a well-managed, productive, and less stressful day actually look like for me? Visualizing that positive outcome.
And that visualization links directly to the final practical concept, doesn't it? The idea of a structured day plan.
Exactly. It brings us to the daily adaptability planner concept. This isn't just about a to-do list. It's about designing your day for success. Absolute consistency is key. Wake up around the same time. First thing, review 3 key priorities for the day. What are the 3 most important things you need to accomplish? This sets your intention immediately.
3 priorities, not 20.
No, just 3 main ones. Keeps it focused.
Yeah.
And crucially, embrace the work first, reward later principle as much as possible. Tackle one of your priority tasks before diving into email or less demanding activities. Leverage those motivation mechanisms, do the hard thing, then get the reward. Remember, a well-managed day isn't necessarily about working nonstop for 16 hours. It's about focus, consistent effort during your planned work blocks, and then fiercely protecting your scheduled rest and recharge time. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground today. We went right from defining procrastination, really nailing that it's primarily an emotional avoidance strategy, not just
Right,
laziness.
the self-regulatory failure.
Exactly. Then we dug into the three main root causes, those psychological fears and beliefs, the cognitive errors and planning failures, and the environmental traps like digital distraction.
Hmm.
And then, most importantly, we armed you, the listener, with this incredibly practical menu of solutions, nearly 30 specific strategies, from the 2-minute rule and Pomodoro technique to self-compassion and time audits, plus those concrete toolkit exercises.
Yeah, and if we just pull back for a second, connect this all to the bigger picture, the ultimate goal here is actually quite profound. It's not just about getting today's assignment done on time or meeting that deadline at work. It's about building healthy adaptability habits.
Healthy adaptability habits. I like that framing.
It's about developing the life discipline that allows you to manage challenges, regulate your emotions effectively, and align your actions with your long-term goals consistently. That's what prevents that whole self-sabotage cycle of delay, guilt, and panic from taking root in the first place across all areas of your life.
That really is the long-term win, isn't it? Discipline not as punishment, but as preparation. Consistent, small actions that just make it easier to start.
Beautifully put. Preparation is key. So, maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away and actually do. Try this one foundational, really actionable habit tonight, pulled straight from the source material we discussed.
Okay, what is it?
Tonight, before you go to sleep, take 5 minutes. Plan your day tomorrow. Write down your main schedule blocks and specifically identify and write down your top 3 priorities for the morning.
Just doing that tonight.
Just doing that simple act of preparation tonight. It transforms avoidance into proactivity. It sets you up for success the second you wake up because the decision of what to focus on is already made. It's a powerful first step to breaking the cycle.
Master the delay, master your time. Set those 3 priorities tonight. That's our deep dive for today.